A farewell to Wen Jiabao, nostalgia for yesterday, rage at today, despair for tomorrow. This is Jersey News Commentary Channel. Recently, a video of Wen Jiabao appearing on the streets of Beijing has been interpreted by many bloggers as releasing some major political signal or directional shift within Zhongnanhai. But my reading is completely different. To me, this is nothing more than a projection of the mind, another round of fantasy spun by many bloggers in pursuit of traffic and attention. In recent years, the internet has been flooded with so-called inside information about political movements inside Zhongnanhai. Every time, these stories are told with great certainty and dramatic detail. But let me ask, aside from being disproven again and again, how many of them have ever truly been verified by facts? So this time, my interpretation of Wen Jiabao's appearance is fundamentally different. In the video, the silver-haired Wen Jiabao repeatedly waves back in response to the crowd's calls. The citizens shout, "Hello, Premier." There is no sense of a deliberately staged political slogan in their voices. What comes through instead is something deeply genuine, a rare, heartfelt warmth. Several times Wen turns back, waves again, clasps his fists in greeting, and even before getting into the car, once more gestures to the crowd in all directions. In the slowness of those movements, in the lingering reluctance and visible unwillingness to part, one can feel through the screen an indescribable heaviness. This is not simply a case of ordinary people seeing a retired senior leader in public. It feels more like a farewell to an era. What people are saying goodbye to is not merely Wen Jiabao as a person, but to that China of yesterday, a China that, despite all its many problems, at least still retains some sense of reality, common sense, and the hope of gradual reform. We must admit that the Wen decade was far from perfect. During those 10 years, the seeds of the real estate bubble had already been planted, local government debt was beginning to swell, the trend toward crony capital accumulation was intensifying, the wealth gap was widening, and corruption was already spreading. But why do so many people today feel nostalgic for that era? Because it was still a China in which the system had not yet been completely sealed shut, the economy was still growing, society still had expectations, and ordinary people could still breathe. During those 10 years, China's GDP expanded rapidly, foreign trade surged forward, manufacturing kept expanding, urbanization advanced in parallel, and the middle class took shape at remarkable speed. Local governments still had land sale revenues, household wealth was supported by rising property values, and the private sector was still vibrant. More importantly, that period still preserved a narrative of reform. In 2012, at his final press conference, Wen Jiabao left behind a statement that later came to resemble the political last words of an era. Without the success of political structural reform, economic reform cannot be carried through to the end. The gains we have already achieved may be lost, and historical tragedies such as the Cultural Revolution may happen again. At the time, many people dismissed all of this as just another political performance. Many spared no effort in mocking him. Looking back today, however, those words were undoubtedly a precise warning about China's future. And this, in turn, highlights that Mr. Wen Jiabao's conscience was never asleep. Sadly, at the time, none of us were willing to listen. Do we not, in some sense, owe Mr. Wen Jiabao an apology? People are moved by Wen Jiabao today not because his achievements in office were exceptionally glorious, but because reality has now turned that era into a comparatively normal past. Today's China is no longer merely experiencing a steady economic decline. It is facing a dual collapse, political darkness and economic deceleration, spiraling into loss of balance. Let us begin with the economy. By 2025, China's fiscal revenue had continued to deteriorate, while debt mountains had risen ever higher. By the broadest measure, total debt has exceeded 400 trillion renminbi, with interest payments alone approaching the size of annual tax revenue. The world's second-largest economy entered the dark tunnel of debt-financed survival at least 3 years ago. Real estate continues sinking with no sign of reversal. Housing prices nationwide have already plunged for 3 consecutive years, wiping out more than 60 trillion renminbi in wealth each year. The downward momentum is only intensifying. Vacant housing space has reached over 20 billion square meters. The army of the unemployed is like a breached flood, surging in all directions. Factories are shutting down in batches, and countless workers can no longer find jobs. The employment rate for university graduates is below 15%, and more than 70 million graduates now face joblessness upon graduation. It has become normal for master's graduates to drive for ride-hailing apps or deliver food. More than 300 million people are classified as flexibly employed, many working as little as 1 hour a week. What kind of collapsing world is this? Now look at politics. In today's China, when officials face the local emperor Xi Jinping, they flatter, grovel, and willingly become shameless servants. But when those same officials face ordinary people, what they deliver is layer upon layer of extraction, pressure, batons, and iron fists. And when the Communist Party faces public discourse, it responds with censorship, account bans, arrests, and prison. The party stands above the law. The party leads everything: government, military, society, schools, east, west, south, north, and center. Under a one-man system, Xi Jinping has become even more ruthless than emperors of ancient times. In just the past 2 years alone, more than 9 million officials of all ranks have been investigated, purged, or disciplined. Under Xi's rule, the rule of law has decayed, public morality has darkened, and this vast country now exists in a state of being neither alive nor dead. At this moment, when people look back at Wen Jiabao's phrase "the gains may be lost," many are shocked to realize that his warning has not only all come true, but reality has gone even further. So those repeated cries of "Hello, Premier!" on the streets of Beijing carry at least 3 layers of meaning. The first is nostalgia for the past. It carries the longing of countless ordinary people for the Wen era, not nostalgia for Hu and Wen as individuals, but for a time when reform could still be discussed, when rule of law could still be discussed, when markets could still be discussed, and when hope itself could still be discussed. The second is rage at the present. Today, the state machine grows ever more powerful, yet ordinary people increasingly feel as though they are living inside a prison. The grand narratives become more and more elevated, but the lives of ordinary people become ever more difficult and despairing. People express their dissatisfaction and anger with today by channeling it through their nostalgia for yesterday. The third is despair for tomorrow. The heaviest burden is not today's hardship itself, but the fact that many people no longer believe tomorrow will be better. That is what makes this sense of farewell so piercing. The lingering reluctance in Wen Jiabao's wave, and the emotional response from the citizens, are in essence not directed toward a retired old man, but toward the final fading silhouette of an era. If Xi Jinping does not fall, and if the CCP does not collapse, then what lies ahead is clear: the economy moves toward complete breakdown, social emotions grow increasingly pessimistic, and the international environment deteriorates further. Therefore, China's people will either perish in despair, or resist in despair. So what truly pierces the heart in Wen Jiabao's street appearance is not his white hair, but the sudden realization that the China of yesterday, flawed, yet still reparable, may truly never return. That is the real meaning, and the real weight, of this farewell to Wen Jiabao video.